Yeah. So let's start with the payable modules. So for
Okay.
payable modules, there are few prerequisites in order to do the transaction. So
Okay.
basically, if you look at the payable modules, we have three functions. So that is
Mm.
invoicing, and we have payments, and then we have accounting. So accounting is nothing but whatever the invoice and the payment that we have created in this application. Basically, we will be transferring the entries of this invoice and payables to the general ledger module. Okay.
Okay.
And apart from that, we have a few other options inside this invoice and the payables. So if I wanted to make payment, so either it can be manual payment or it can be batch payment.
Okay.
Okay, so either way, we'll record the payment number, and with the payment number, I'll just have this as a reference, and I can cross verify with my invoice the dues and the balances, other things. Okay, and invoice, if you look at it,
So batch payment means that includes a batch of invoices,
no,
bunch
it's
of
not
invoices in that
invoice
batch,
batch.
no?
So invoice batch is different from the payment batch. So batch payment is something. Okay, let's take a scenario. So let's say I have 10 invoices in my hand. So which means I have one vendor with 10 invoices. So I
Okay.
can process this as a manual payment. So here, if
Okay.
you see in under payments, we have two options. So either I can say this is a payment, which is a manual way of processing the payment, or I can say payments manager. So when I say it is a payments manager, which means this is an what do you call the group of invoices that I can select and process it as in one single invoice. And the other way is that, so what is the difference between the manual payment and the payment manager is that, so under payment tab, which we are seeing at first, so I have a restriction here. So I cannot have different vendors here. So the vendor should be same, but whereas I can have the multiple invoices. But I
Okay.
will have not more than 5 to 10 invoices for a particular vendor in a given period. But whereas I'll have maybe 50 to 100 vendors to make in a particular period, let's say November. I have 50
Okay.
vendor payments that is lying in my desk. So I have to make payments. Maybe today is the last date. Let's take
Okay.
this kind of scenario where we are paying the rent. So today is the last date. So if I wanted to process all this 100 invoices for the rent payment, so it will be a tedious process for me. So for this process, what I will do is that I'll have this payment manager. So this payment manager will have set of selection criteria. So based on this criteria, basically we will select the vendors and we will process it. So there are few parameters like we can give the currency, we can give operating unit, and we can give pay group. So similarly, we have different criteria. So based on this criteria, we can select multiple vendors and multiple invoices relating or linking to this particular vendors. Okay. So that is the basic difference between the manual payment and the payment manager. So basically, if we
Okay.
wanted to process huge payments, so that is when we will go for payment manager. So we call this as a payment process request. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Any doubt?
No.
Okay. So again, if you say an invoice, so invoice also we have different options. So we have recurring invoice and we have standard invoice, and then we can create quick invoice, and we have expense report. So there are multiple options here. Okay. But at high
Okay.
level, these are the three functions that we will do: accounting, payment, and invoices. So in order to do this particular transaction or perform this transaction, we will need few configurations in the system. So what are the configurations that we will need in order to make the transaction? So if you see here, so there are initial or the basic functional configuration that we will need, and apart from that, we will need the vendor and the bank accounts. Okay.
Okay.
So first we will see that what are the things that we have under this particular thing. So to start with, so basically we will have the profile option. So where do we attach the profile assets? So if you see here, so we have a system administrator. So from here we have an option called profile. So if I click system, so I will have, so a particular responsibility will be assigned to me. So in this case, the responsibility that is assigned to me is payable vision operation. Okay. So to get this particular option, I have something called operating unit. So I have two things, default operating unit and I have normal operating unit that I will define. So if I say default operating unit, so which means system is going to default this particular operating unit to the responsibility that I'm assigning it here. Okay. So now here if I select vision operation, so which means system is going to default this particular operating unit for this responsibility called payables, comma vision operation.
Vision operation. Okay.
Okay. So after this, okay. So there are few restrictions to change or edit the default configuration that we have within the system. So apart from,
Okay.
so this is the place that we will attach the operating unit for the responsibility. So that when I select this particular responsibility, I will have this option called operating unit before I select from the list of values. So I'll just navigate back to the responsibility. So here the first configuration for us would be options. So under options, we have financial options. So based on the profile option that we have set in, so system will auto-populate the value called vision operation. So after having this in place, we will have to give the liability account, prepayment account, and the other thing. So basically, why do we need liability account is that this will determine whether uh, the account will be picked from the financial option or the supplier side. So how system will react is that system will verify in the supplier side. If that is not available in the site, system will pick from the financial options. Okay.
Okay.
So this will become mandatory for us to configure. So whatever we are seeing it in yellow, it will be mandatory option to set up. So without this, we will
Okay.
not be able to process to the next level of configuration. So in this case, I
Okay.
have given a liability account and prepayment. So prepayment is nothing but our advance. And then we have bills payable. So bills payable is something that it is kind of an instrument. So what it will do is that let's take an example that is letter of credit. So in case of letter of credit, what will happen is that basically system will have this as an instrument called bills payable. And when this maturity date reaches, so that is when we will update the actual status of the payment. So till then, we will not have this negotiation or the other status called cleared. Okay. So bills payable is something kind of an instrument where it can be used as a term to get the liable amount or to pay to the vendor on the liable amount. So this can be used between the bank, that is vendor bank and the customer bank. So if at all we are using this particular functionality, we can give the respective account here. Okay. So it is not mandatory configuration. If you see, this is in white, which means this is an optional. The reason being is that it is not mandatory that all the business will use this bills payable functionality. So if I have a specific requirement, I will be using it. Or if I'm
Okay.
using only the online payment called NEFT and this thing, I'll be using it. For example, we cannot expect what do you call Walmart to have bills payable functionality because all they do is that cash and carry business. So we cannot expect this from the Walmart. So
Hello.
similarly, it will changes from business to business. So for this reason, this is an optional field. Okay. And then we have discount taken. So discount taken is something that we will take discount when we pay this amount, which is matured before the particular given period. Okay. So we have, let's say, 15 days as an term days. So if we pay before 10 days, maybe we will give we will get 5% discount. When it crosses 10 days, we will get 1 or 2% discount. But whereas in case of 15 days, we are not going to get any sort of discount. Okay. So so we have to define the discount account. And then we have PO rate variance and we have PO rate variance loss. So what is PO rate variance? So PO rate variance is something that let's take an item. So item called laptop. So this laptop is priced as, let's say, 70,000. So now when we receive the bill from the customer or the vendor, so it says this is an 1,10,000. So which means there is a variance. So the variance between the actual cost of the item inside this inventory and what is received in the PO copy that we received from the vendor. Okay, so this difference will be captured under PO rate variance. So here we are giving gain and loss account to understand whether this is a gain to the company or loss to the company. Okay, and then expense clearing. Expense clearing will be when we import the transaction from the other system. So we will need the clearing account. So for those cases, we can use this. And we have miscellaneous. So miscellaneous is something that we have miscellaneous lines in the invoice. So we have three parts to the invoice. So that is header, lines, and distribution. So in lines, if you see, we have items, we have miscellaneous, and then we have taxes. So for miscellaneous, if you want to calculate, if you want to generate the account code combination, so we can set up here. Okay.
Okay.
And then we have retainage. So retainage is something that, let's say, the invoice amount is 1,000. So in this, if you want to retain maybe 10% until we receive the entire service from the vendor. So for those cases, we can create an invoice saying retainage invoice. So until we receive the services completely, we will have this particular account. Okay. And
Okay.
then we have future period. So future period is something that in this particular period, I can basically enter the transaction, but I'll not be able to transfer or post this particular transaction in the GL. So here in this case, we have taken one period. So which means, let's say I'm in the month of November. So December period, I can enter the transaction, but I'll not be able to post it. Okay.
Okay.
And then we have the purchasing related configuration. So where we will define the inventory organization. So this will be our mandatory configuration. So even if we are implementing only the financial modules, so still this will become as an this thing what we call. So even if we are implementing only for the financial module, still we need the dummy inventory arcs. So after having this in place, maybe we can attach it here. So these are the optional configurations that is ship to and bill to. So this is not mandatory, but this will be a mandatory option to have the inventory arc. And then we have encumbrance. Okay, so there is a mild difference between budget and encumbrance. Okay, so budget is something that that is used to estimate when we have what do you call the planned activities. Let's say rent. Rent payment is my planned expenses. So for this case, I will use the budget. But whereas let's say the other case where I'm running a manufacturing business, so here I will need 10 quantities of raw material this month and 20 in next month. Similarly, it will keep changing. Even though I have analysis and the forecast and the other things in place, so still I might have the discrepancies here and there. So for those cases, I will use the encumbrance. So which means I'm doing the forecast for unplanned expenses. Okay. So that is the purpose. So if we are using it, maybe it will have control over our expenses whenever we are booking the purchase order. I mean, not purchase order. Basically, it will start from there. But in our case, we will have it starting from the invoices. Okay. And then we have the VAT registration. So this is localization based registration or the inputs that we'll be giving to the system. So I'll just leave it blank. So because I don't want to use as an taxation here at this point. And then we have human resource related information. So if at all we wanted to have this payable module, so we need to have the operating unit. So to have the operating unit, basically we will need the ledger and the legal entity setup. So to have the legal entities and the ledger setup and to link this particular operating unit, we will need the business group because business group is the one which will sit or which will reside in top. Okay. So from there, we are just trying to drill down and get to the lowest level that is, let's say, operating unit in our finance case. If this is in SEM, we will have the inventory. Okay. So similarly,
Okay.
so we are attaching the business groups here and we are saying expense reimbursement address as office. And this is again, this is HRMS related configuration, automatic employee number. So we will set it as automatic and we will say number to start. So in this case, it is 3813. So this will be our initial configuration, that is financial options. Okay. So the next setup for us would be payables system setup. So here, if you see, we have setups or we have controls for the suppliers and payments. So the first configuration would be the invoice number generation. So whether we wanted to have it automatic or manual. So we can choose either way. So if you see here, we will have automatic and we will have manual. And the second option is to have the number sequence. So whether it will be numeric or alphanumeric. So I have taken numeric. That is to start from 17.
Okay.
And then we have invoice option. So there are multiple options to match the invoice. So we can select the purchase order, we can select the receipt, or we can say that this is at the inception stage as well. So we say two-way, three-way, and four-way matching. Okay. And then we
Okay.
have an option called hold unmatched invoices. So which means this particular unit that we are setting up, that is payable vision operations, will always have the invoices with purchase order. So if this is without the purchase order, system is going to take always in hold. It will not release it unless it is matched with the particular purchase order. So we will not be able to make the manual invoices. Okay, and then we have payment related controls. So that is from the invoice currency. So I have so usually it is USD. So anyway, I can override this in the transaction. So I'll just leave it as it is. And we have pay group. So pay group is nothing but it is to just to classify this particular transaction either into or you call let's say rent payment. So I can have one pay group. So this is for the defaultation purpose. But again, this can be overridden in the invoice transaction. Yeah, okay. So at high level, pay group is something to basically to define or to classify under a particular bucket so that I can attach it to the invoice and I can process this as a batch with with the help of pay group. Okay. And
Okay.
then we have term date basis. So term date basis is nothing but payment term. So what is payment term? So payment term is something that when I'm going to pay this particular payment. So let's say I have received an item on 10th of November. So when am I going to process this particular payment is the question. So in this case, I have selected immediate, but anyway, I can process it for 15 days, 7 days, 10 days. So I can process this. Okay.
Okay.
So I can say even net 30 or net 7 or these things. Just give me a minute.
How many net 30 for all invoices?
Just 1 minute. Give me one. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, tell me. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are having some query, right, regarding the payment
No,
and
no, 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 sir, no. Actually, net 30 is for most of the invoices
yeah, yes, correct. Most
payment.
it will be net 30 or 14 days net. So
Yes.
either yeah, it is mostly 30 days or 14 days of net. So either way we can use this. Okay.
Okay.
So basically in this particular configuration, we are telling to the system, yeah, just give me 1 minute.
Okay. Ma.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes. So if you see, so we have said that to the system that this will be processed in 30 days. But how system will understand from which state I should take this and from which state the system should consider this as on 30 days. So that is what we are trying to identify here, whether I'm going to use the system date or I'm going to use the invoice date or I'm going to use the goods received date or invoice received date. So when I say
Okay.
system date, which means let's say I create a backdated entry that is on invoice. So invoice I'm creating it on 1st of November. Okay.
Okay.
But when I select system as a configuration level here, so system is going to calculate from the 17th of November and it is going to say after 10 days, that is 27th of November. But actually, if you see, the invoice date is on what do you call the 10th of November. So
Okay.
when I say invoice is on 10th of November, if I select invoice here, system is going to process after 10 days. So that is on 20th, after 3 days from today. Okay.
Okay.
So similarly, we have goods received and the other options as well. So this is the purpose of having the term date basis. Okay. And then we have pay date basis. So here we have, this is mostly due because we are not going to pay based on the discount. So
By due only.
yeah, do. So yeah, and apart from that, we have two other options. So that is always take discounts and create the interest invoice. So interest invoice will be for the late payments. So that will be charged as an interest invoice that we will pay to the vendor. And the other option is that take discount. So when we say always take discount, all the invoice will have discounts. So I don't want that option. So I'm just leaving this open for now. So these are the options that we have for the payable system setup. Okay. And then we have payable options. So this is where basically we define all those controls and the other options inside the system. So if you see here, so we have payment accounting. So where we say that accounting should happen when payment is issued and when payment clears. So which means, let's say I create an payment entry today. So after completing this particular payment file, after I generate the payment file, this status will change to negotiable. So which means I have issued the payment. So now I can create an accounting entry when I enable this particular option. If I have disabled this option, basically I'll not have accounting entry created for this particular process. Only thing,
Okay.
only accounting entry will be created when I do the reconciliation and clear the payment. But when I say at two level, which means I'll enable it here. So I'll have a cash clearing account coming in. So which will reconcile and it will map between the payment and the cash management of reconciliation, and the cash clearing account will get knocked off. Okay, so basically I'll have payment at two levels when I'm issuing the payment and when I'm clearing the payment or doing the reconciliation with the system transaction and the bank statement. And then we
Mhm.
have account for gain or loss. So when we have issued the payment for to the particular vendor, so it is not mandatory that always we will have only the business that is inside India. Especially in case of manufacturing business, we might procure from different countries. So for those cases, currencies gain or loss, or whatever we wanted to have the gain or loss. So how are we going to maintain? So for this purpose, so whether we are going to what do you call make the payment the same case, whether we wanted to calculate the gain or loss calculation as well when we are issuing the payment or only after the clearing the payment. So here as well, I'm selecting when payment is issued and payment clears. And then we have bills payable account source. So we saw what is bills payable. So here the configuration or the control that we are trying to achieve is that to pick the account code. So either it is from the payment document or from the supplier side. So always we will have the supplier side because it might vary from person to person. So we are, I mean, entity to entity. So we will be mostly switching from the payment document to the supplier side. Okay. And we have automatic offset. So what is automatic offset? So automatic offset is an option where basically we can nullify our account code combination that we are giving it in the expense account in the invoice screen. So let's take a scenario where I have an expense account that is booked under different departments. So basically,
Offset means
so offset is nothing but we are offsetting this particular expense or the liability of the particular invoice. So I'll give one case for you. So here, if you see, let's say we are procuring an what do you call the stationery item, or let's say laptop. So we are procuring laptop for different departments. So in
mm,
expense account, if you see, I'll give different departments. Let's say finance, IT, and admin and the other department as well. Okay,
mm,
so there are four departments that is involved in this particular case. So
okay,
when I say expense account is different, but my liability account still will be same, because liability account is not given by user, or it is not basically given manually. So it is generated based on the system configuration. So that is either from the financial option that we gave earlier step, or it is from the supplier side. Okay.
okay,
Okay, so in this case, liability account will have one department that is defined. So here in this case, if you see, so the liability account will be one, that is finance, but IT and the other things will not reflect. So when I say offset, which means system is going to offset the values whatever I have given it in the expense distribution account combination. Accordingly, it is going to distribute for the liability as well. Okay, so that is the
okay,
purpose of having the automatic offset.
okay.
Yeah, and then we have discount method. So discount method, how do we want to manage? So whether it is based on the system account or we wanted to prorate the expense. So prorate the expense is nothing but for it will basically distribute across the lines. And if we say prorate tax again, instead of expense, we will have the taxes also calculated as a part of discount. Okay. And then we have the interest. So interest again, this is for the late payments. Basically, we will have interest. So for accounting, so from where are we picking? So this is basically from the system account. Okay. And then we have the prepayment account as well. So here also I'm just mentioning as supplier side because I don't want to pick it from the purchase order. So this again depends on the client requirement. How do we want to manage it? But in this case, I have just given it as an supplier side. And then we have the currency part for the payment processing. So when I say use multiple currencies, which means I can do foreign currency transaction. But when I disable this particular option, I'll not be able to make a foreign currency transaction. Okay. So after this, we will have require exchange rate entry and the other options. So this is basically the foreign currency rate that I can use. So the exchange rate that I'm using here is corporate. So this for this particular corporate rate type, basically I'll have the entry and the rates involved in it. So having this in place, I will have the rates for today and tomorrow. So similarly, I'll have the particular period and I can do the transaction. And for the foreign currency transaction, basically I'll have different rates. So let's take US. So that is today I might have 74 rupees and tomorrow I might have 75 rupees. So it depends on the rate or the market fluctuations. So based on this, I will identify whether this is a gain or loss to the company when I calculate at end of the period. Okay. So here I will have the rounding account as well. So in case this is an point or the precision is maybe 2 digit. So in this case, I will want to maybe round this particular point, maybe 1 5 or 5 6 7. So I wanted to round it. So this rounding difference will be picked up or it will be placed in this particular account called rounding account. Okay. And then we have the tax reporting. So tax reporting is something that is legislation based compliance based requirement. So it defines, so this, if you see, this is mostly used for the US region implementations, so where we will use this filing program and the other things. So in our case we are not considering these options. And then we have invoice. So for invoice, so whether we wanted to use this option called confirm date as invoice number. So let's say we are not entering the invoice number. So when we enable this option, when we press tab, so system will consider this particular option. So that is invoice date as an invoice number. So there is a
Okay.
validation of duplication as well, but system will allow for the first time and allow online validation. So to validate the invoice, basically we have two options. So either to run the concurrent program for the bulk invoices, or we can do the online validation. That is, we can create the invoice and we can click action and validate the invoice. So when I say allow online validation, system is going to allow me to validate specific invoice. And we have allow document category override. So allow document category override is something that it will allow me to override the document that I have specified for this particular operating unit. And I have allow adjustments to the paid invoice. Let's say the invoice is paid, but this is not accounted. So should I allow to adjust this particular paid invoice? So unless this is an unaccounted or the reconciled, I will be allowing it to adjust the invoices in rare case if business wants to have this particular functionality. Okay.
Okay.
And then we have recalculate schedule payment. So let's say there is a change in the payment schedule. So whether we want system to recalculate the schedule payment, so we can enable this option if we want to calculate the schedules. Okay, and then we have remit to account override. So remit to account override and remit to supplier override is something that it will basically have an address. So to this address, if you want to allow overriding or changing this particular address to the different address, so that we can allow it here. Okay, then we have receipt acceptance days. So this is not a mandatory option. We can leave it as it is. And then we have the GL date basis. So GL date basis we have in we can give invoice date, or we can give system date, or we can give goods received date.
Okay.
So here again we have goods received date, invoice date, or we can give system goods received date or system date. Anyway, we can override it at the transaction, but still for the automation purpose, if we wanted to have default or populate the dates automatically, we will give system dates most of the cases, because we might need the backdated invoice entries, but the GL date will be always on the current date or the current period.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have the freight. So freight is nothing but our cargo charges and the other things. So this is the account that we are using for the freight. And for prepayment, always it is immediate payment.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have the invoice workflow. That is, after creating the invoice, basically we will navigate, or we will route it to the respective manager to get it verified and accounted. Okay. And then we have the matching option, allow final option, final matching, and allow distribution level matching. So these are the different options that we have to match the purchase order or the receipt with the invoice. So when we enable this particular options, basically we can match for the final one, that is PO or receipt, or we can say at the distribution level also, so depending on the this thing that we give. Okay, and then we have an option called transfer PO descriptive flex field information. So let's say, so there are few inputs that we are capturing as a part of DFF in PO, purchase order. So, so let's say the location of the vendor, for example. So this particular information, if you wanted to transfer to the payable invoices as well, so we can enable it here, so that when we are matching it, so we will have the information here as well. And then we have the tolerance. So tolerance is for the goods tolerance, that is units. So I have picked the same tolerance, that is vision operation tolerance that we have defined. So after this, basically we will looking at the tolerance, what is tolerance and why do we use it. Okay, then we have the interest. So interest is nothing but again creating the interest invoices. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to create the interest invoices, basically we'll have the expense account and the liability account depend for this. So if we say allow, we will be able to see other options. So I'll say no for now. And we have, just give me a minute.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was saying about the expense report. So basically, when do we use expense report is that when we have maybe per diem and the other charges that employee will be incurring, but whereas this will be part of the company expenses which can be redeemed or reimbursed at later point of time. So that is when we will have the expense template defined for the employees, and we will attach the template that we have created, and we will say that this employee will be created as a vendor automatically, so that this payment can be given to this particular vendor. Okay, so this will be usually for the travel and the other accommodation expenses that employees incurred, which can be reimbursed at the later point. Okay, so for that we are attaching the template, and we say the payment terms, so that depends on the company policy. So when do they want to process the payments,
Okay.
and we say the pay group. So pay group, basically we are just configuring this. Just 1 minute. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's it about the expense report, and also we have few controls over the payments. So whether we wanted to allow predated payment. So when I disable this particular option called allow predated payment, I cannot create the payment earlier to this. That is for the 16th November, I cannot make the payment. But when I allow this particular option, I'll be able to make the payments provided the periods are open, both the payables and the GL periods. Okay, and we have allow void and reissue. So which means if I wanted to void this transaction and I wanted to reissue this particular payment, so that is I'll void it for now, and maybe I'll reissue a new one, so that I can do it with the option allow void and reissue. Okay,
Okay.
and then we have allow address change. So if you wanted to change the address of the vendor, so when we say allow address change, we can enable this option. And apart
Okay.
from that, we have the bank charges related configurations. So bank charges will be mostly handled in CMS. So apart from that, if you want to handle a few charges deducted from the payment, so that we can specify here and we can generate the bank charges. Okay. And the others are like remit to supplier, and these things are similar to our invoice thing what we saw. So at a high level, so these are the options that we have. And apart from that, we have the invoice currency and the what do you call, the term date basis, and the other options we what we saw in the payable system setups. Okay. Then we have the withholding tax. So we have two taxes basically. One is that EB tax and withholding tax, and few cases we have the localization taxes as well. That is, we have GST or maybe VAT for UAE. So it depends. So localization will be different, and apart from that, we have the withholding tax. So these are the configuration. So the first configuration would be to use the withholding tax if at all we are using it, and we
Okay.
have withholding amount basis. So amount should be based on the taxes, or it should be based on the this thing, what do you call, whether we wanted to include the discounts as well. So that will be part of this withholding basis configuration.
Okay.
And then we have this one, withholding tax application. So when do we want to generate the withholding tax? So withholding tax will be generated as a separate invoice. So when do we want to generate this? When we are making the payment, or when we are making the invoice validation, or both the invoice validation and the payment issue of payment. So how do we want to handle it? So that's what we are saying it. So so in this case we are saying invoice validation.
Okay.
And then we have invoice date basis. So the date for the withholding tax will be invoice date or GL date. So we can prefer invoice date, considering the backdated entries. And then we have withholding amount basis. Yeah, we saw this. And creating the withholding invoices. So we saw that this thing, what do you call, the same configuration like applying the withholding tax. Similarly, how do we want to handle this? So same options, like whether we wanted to have after validation, or we wanted to have after payment. So I just select the standard one, that is invoice validation. Okay. So these are the configuration that we have for payable options. Yeah. So after this, so we have other few optional configurations. So to start with, so I'll start with the payment terms. So payment terms is an mandatory anyway, because we need this So apart from that, we have distribution and the other things. So those are basically the optional configurations. So payment terms we can specify here. So in due amount we can say 100% if this is an immediate. So in this case, what will happen is that this 30% due. So let's say 100 rupees is the actual invoice amount. So this 30% due will be on 10 days, and another
Okay.
30% due will be on 20 days, and another 40% will be on 30 days. So this is the actual days that we are defining it here. Okay. So apart from that, we can also set up a discount for this particular payments. So if you see here, so we have discount as 1% for the 30% due. So when it is received in 8 days. So similarly, we can set up the discounts for this payment.
Okay.
So this is about the payment terms. So we can just say the due percentage and days. So for immediate, we will not have any this thing because 100% will be matured immediately. Okay, and then we have the
Okay.
distribution set. So distribution set is an optional configuration. So this will be used mostly to avoid the data entry, huge data entry. Like there will be a business case where we will use where we will procure few items on a monthly basis for maybe 10 or 20 departments. So in this case, I don't want to select this account code combination every time manually, considering the data entry effort. So what I will do is that I'll say two different account. So that is I mean same account but different department. That is finance and IT. So I can segregate the percentage. So I will say 50% and 50%. Which means when I say 50%, if I say 100% as an invoice amount, system is going to split it out as an 50-50 and it is going to give the respective amounts. So that is the purpose of having it. So we don't need to enter this distribution every time manually. Okay. And then
Okay.
we have the tolerance. So tolerance is nothing but when we are matching this purchase order or the receipt. So that is when we will need the tolerance. So if you see here, so this is for the ordered quantity. So for the ordered quantity, so how much percentage we wanted to keep the tolerance. So similarly for the maximum ordered and the received and the maximum receipt. So when we give the tolerance, system is going to avoid the hold. So based on the tolerance limit that we have defined it here. Okay. And then we have the holds and releases. So holds and releases are something that it can be system generated holds or it can be manual hold that manager or the particular user can put in. So for example, system holds are like distribution variance. So the line amount is different from the distribution amount. So in this case, system is going to generate the distribution variance by itself. So unless we release this hold by correcting the respective amount, so system is not going to release it. Okay. So this will be the system hold and manual hold as the one if you see here. So the training. So this we can say, define it here and we can set up the workflow and in the workflow we can define. So after concluding this particular action, basically this what do you call the hold can be released. So we can set up that. Okay.
Okay.
So this is one option, and apart from that, we have two other options that is accounting allowed and manual release allowed. So when we say manual release allowed, which means system will be able to release it, which means an invoice user who is creating an invoice will be able to release the whole manually. So you don't need to ask his respective manager or the other person, the
Then,
responsible person. So he can release by himself. Okay. So most of the
okay.
cases it will not be a manual release. So manual release can be released by anyone. So we will define certain condition to this. So based on the condition, basically system will release the holds. And then we have accounting allowed. So even then the particular invoice is in hold. whether we wanted to allow the accounting. So most of the cases it will be no for the accounting. So if we say accounting, which means even though it is system is in hold, basically the accounting entries will flow to GL. So even though I didn't create the actual transaction. Okay, so that's it about the holds and releases. And then we have the payment related configurations. So for payments, the major configuration would be payment administration. So if you look at the payment administration, so basically we will have the payment method, and we will have the other option like payment process profiles. So
Okay.
here if you see, we have XML publisher format templates. So this is nothing but our payment file. So if you see, so yeah, before that, I'll give a brief introduction like how these payments are being processed. So we have two ways of processing the payment. So this can be either manual or it can be automatic. So manual is nothing but we run the payment batch and we generate the payment file. So after generating the payment file, so payment file will be specific to the bank. So after generating this particular payment file, what we will do is that basically we will take this file and we will upload into the corporate account of the bank server. So bank will pick from there and bank is going to process it. So this is manual payment. And what is automatic? And what are the ways of doing the automatic payment? So automatic payments are two types. Either we can use the SFTP route or we can use the API. So there is a mild difference between the SFTP route and the API. So both are kind of an host-to-host communication where we will do the bank whitelisting. So I will say this is my IP details to the bank with the help of DB link. So after this, what will happen is that bank will register my IP in their local host, so that whenever I'm pushing the file inside this particular SFTP folder, so system is going to pick, bank is going to pick and process it. Okay, so this we call a traditional SFTP route, and the other route is that API communication. So API communication is something that it will happen in a like I don't need to wait till my this thing comes in, or we call the bank statement comes in. Okay, so
Okay.
what will happen is that in case of API, we will have REST APIs. So this will have a JSON object, and this will basically communicate with the bank, and it will generate in a go. We can generate it, and we will have the bank statement, and bank statement will have the relevant this thing updates. So this is the high level what do you call information on the payment, how they will process all those things. So here in this case, if you see this format, that what we are saying is for the payment file. So we can download the template from here, XML publisher, and we can make the necessary modification and we can create our own format here. So if you see here, so I can have my own format. So I can say create, and I can yeah, I need to give the fields, I think. So I can just say this is the naming convention, and I can say this is the template. After editing the template, I can attach the template here, and I can say the data extract. So this will be mostly the payment Oracle payment fund disbursement instruction extract. Okay, since I'm not using any gateways or
Okay.
okay, so these are the things that I'll be using it. And after creating the format, so what I will do is that I'll basically create the payment method. So this payment method will have the details, or it will basically be used when we are using the invoice. So this is the payment method that we will be using. So here, if you see, so we will say this is the naming convention. And after that, we can say that this is the what do you call the payment method for the bills payable. Or if we wanted to use it for a specific case, maybe we can use that as well. So let me create a sample one. Okay. So I have assigned it to the payables and receivable and the other modules as well. Okay. So I'm done with the payment. Yeah. So I have the payment method created. So the next setup would be to give the payment process profile. Yeah. So apart from that, we have other delivery channel and the other related configuration. So if at all we are having the what do you call the we have a payment gateway where we will set up the tunnel and the other payment related configurations. So for those cases, we will have the delivery channels and this things, service levels. So in this case, I'm just selecting this one payment process profile. So I'll say payment process profile. Okay. So here I just say the naming convention and I'm attaching the payment format that we created in the first setup. I mean, the earlier configuration we saw that we will download the template and we will attach it and we will say this is the format for us. So I'm attaching this particular format here. And one check that we have is that we have two things here. So the payment format that we are giving it here and we are attaching it in the bank account should be same. So unless that is same, system is not going to progress because the format that attached in the bank account is different. The reason being is that we are not attaching this particular payment format directly to the system. It is picked up from the bank account. So that is the reason it should be always same. Okay. So this is one thing, and the document in the payment that will what do you call navigate or it will address this particular payment format. Okay. So after that we have payment processing type. So either we wanted to have printed or electronic. So this is an online payment like NEFT or RTGS. We can select electronic, or maybe for check we can say printed. So when it is an electronic, we will have the mode of processing. So that is whether we wanted to have the gateway or we wanted to use the normal Oracle payments. So I'm selecting normal Oracle payments and I have something called payment completion point. So when do I want to have the payment completion? So when the payment instrument is formatted. So other options are like I can set it manual or I can say when it is built or payment instruction is created. So I say when it is formatted or even I can say when it is transmitted. So transmitted is nothing but after generating this particular payment file, basically we will transmit or we will send this payment file to the respective SFTP folder. So that is when we will generate also we can say. So basically this will be our completion point when the payment is formatted. So to have the better control, it is suggested to have when payment instruction is transmitted in case of SFTP. So in case of normal manual payments, the suggested approach is to have when the payment instruction is formatted. Okay. And then we have the transmitted related configuration. If we wanted to have the payment file to be transmitted to the bank through the SFTP route, so that is when we will have all these options. Okay. And then we have the usage rules. So usage rule is nothing but it is basically to restrict or to say that this particular payment process can be used across the business unit or across the legal entities, bank accounts, and the payment methods. So enabling it for all, and then we have payment instruction creation rules. So if we wanted to set any particular condition here, so that we can define it here. So this is basically a condition to group the particular payments. Okay, and then we have the separate remittance. So if we wanted to get a remittance from the bank for a specific in a specific format, so we can attach this format here, and we can attach the delivery channels as well here. Okay. So these are the options that we have in the payment process profile. So once we are ready with our payment process profile, so we are good to create the invoice and the payment. So that is both with the manual payment and the batch payment. Okay, so I'll just navigate to the front end application screen. Yeah. So before that, I'll also show the supplier and the bank creation part. Okay. So we have a vendor called maybe Tata or any vendor. So I'll just say apply. So which means this will be created as a separate what do you call the vendor. Okay. So there is some issue with generating the vendor number.
already.
Since this is an ocean environment, basically people are using the supplier life cycle. So we are having conflict in generating the supplier number. Okay, I'll just show the vendor that is available. Yeah. So if you see here, I have created a vendor called APC. So this will so vendor will have also the site. So site is nothing but the branch office or the office address. So that is what we are saying site. So for a vendor, we might have the two different offices as well. So for this cases, we will create two different sites of the vendor. Okay. So here we will
Okay.
have more of additional information as well. So if you want to capture the information of tax, complaints, and the other details, we can set it up here. And the mandatory option would be to create the address book. So to have the site created, so basically we will need the address. So we will give the address and we will say the purpose. So purpose here is that payment and the purchasing. Okay. So after creating the address, basically we will assign the sites to this. So if you see here, so this is the address that I have created, and I have enabled the address purpose, that is purchasing and payments. Okay. So then after creating the address, basically we will have this one. So if we are using the NEFT and RTGS or the online transaction, so we will need to create the bank account as well. So in this case, if it is check or cash, so I don't need to create the bank accounts. So I'll just leave it open. But if at all we need the NEFT or RTGS, we will need this created. Okay. And then we have the accounting and the invoice and the payment part. So here, if you see, I have something called liability. So this is what we are seeing when we are seeing this financial option. We saw that liability account can be created either at the financial option or at the supplier site. So system will basically verify as an self one. It will check in the supplier configuration here in this particular place. So if the liability account is not set up here, system will pick it from the financial option. So I'm leaving this option open since I'll just pick it from the financial option. So similarly, we have for the prepayment and the other option. And if you want to set up a specific distribution set that we have it already. So that we can set up here. Okay, this will need a separate site creation. Okay, let me attach one site here. Okay, so for this thing testing purpose, I have taken telephone expense distribution set. Okay, and I have saved this. And apart from that, I have the invoicing and the payment configuration. So invoicing is nothing but it will just gives you controls over our invoice currency and how do we want to manage our matching rule and the other things. Okay. So these are the things that we have. So in payment, we are just selecting the currency and terms we have selected for this particular vendor as an this thing immediate. Okay, and apart from that, if you want to have a default payment method, so that we can select it from here. So I'll just select the standard check payment. So I'll say default. So that's it on the supplier.
Okay.
Okay, so we will move on with our bank account. Yeah, so bank and branch is simple. So what we will do is that we will basically give the country and we will say the bank name. And similarly for branch as well. So we will just give it. Others are like additional information to give the address and the contact information. So the actual configuration for us will be on the bank account. Okay. So I'll just navigate to the bank account creation screen. Yeah, so here I have selected the bank account that is for our operating unit or the legal entity. So that is vision operations, and I'm selecting the payables and receivables. So I'll just give name for this, and we can say multi-currency allowed. And then we will give the respective cash account and cash clearing. Yeah. So apart from that, we have few other options. So whether we wanted to have multi-currency payments and we wanted to use the zero payments. So basically, when do we use the zero payment is that when we have this one defined. Let's say there is an invoice that we are canceling this particular thing, and after canceling, this invoice amount will become zero, but still this will come in our APTB report. So to avoid that, so basically we will make the zero payment invoices. So for that, the configuration would be to enable it here to allow the zero payments. Okay. So after that, so we will have to give the access to the respective business unit, I mean operating unit. So I say for payable and receivable, and the operating unit would be Asian operations. Okay, so that's it. We are done with our configuration. So I'll just say apply. Yeah, save and finish. Yeah, so this is done. So apart from that, if you see, we have an option here that is manage payments. Okay, so we are good with our configuration. So let's try to create an invoice for this particular operating unit, and we can see on cycle of payment.
Okay.
So this is the invoice that we saw. So I'll just use that as it is, and let me see for maybe 10,000. So if you see here, so based on the vendor that we have selected, system has automatically picked the distribution set. And
Okay.
now we will see in distribution like how it is basically reflected. And the configuration part, if you see, we said that this is based on the system date, the payment terms. So since we have selected as an immediate, so which means today it will get matured immediately. Okay. And
Okay.
also in the supplier side, we selected this thing what you call the payment method as an check, as an mandatory. I mean, as check as an option.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you remember in our configuration, we gave the pay group as an standard. So
And
that's why
yes.
we are having the standard as an pay group here.
Okay.
Okay, so we are good with our header level information. And
Okay.
now let's create the line level information for the invoice. So I'll just create the same 10,000.
Okay.
Now if I see line,
Industry.
I should be able to see the respective this thing.
But bank account number is not shown in indexing field.
Which one? Bank account.
Okay. Okay.
No, like the bank account number you are asking.
Okay.
I mean, your doubt is different, or
Yeah, yeah. Bank account number is not shown in that indexing field, right? That's only I'm
the
asking.
bank account number, it will not be shown here because we didn't give the bank account details of this particular vendor. Okay, so what
Yeah.
we can do is that we can give one this thing for this particular vendor and we can check. So before that, I'll try to close this particular invoice. Okay, so I'm just saying okay. Yeah. So let me validate this.
Just click hold. um, Release.
Okay, I think I enabled withholding tax. Let me disable this option for now.
What this is invalidated.
Yeah. So the invoice is validated and it is accounted.
Okay.
Okay. So now what we will do is that we will take the same vendor and we will try to add the bank account and we will see that whether it is reflecting in the invoice screen. Okay. I think we don't have this. Yeah, so we have supplier bank account attached to it. So this is the bank account number that we have given, and bank account name basically we didn't define it. So we will need to define the account name so that we will have it here as well. Okay. So this will be our bank account this thing details that will be transferred to the supplier. I mean the vendor bank account. So apart from that, the other details are same. So let me enter on this thing for 12,000 and validate this. Okay, fine. This is accounted. So now what we will do is that so we will see two payments. So one is manual payment, and the other one we will see is that this one what we call the batch payments. So first I'll show the manual payment. I forgot the bank exactly we created. Okay, let me take the SP for now. Maybe you can process the another payment as well. Yeah. Okay, I think we chose electronic, not Yeah, are you hearing now? Hello? Hello?